What does it really take to spark a world war in 2025? When the headlines are already screaming about nuclear deadlines, submarine maneuvers, and threats from every direction, how close are we to a single mistake flipping the switch? And most importantly, is the next global conflict more likely to start with a massive invasion, or with a simple error, a technical glitch, or a misunderstood signal that sets everything in motion? Today we're going beyond the usual analysis. We'll break down the 5 real-world factors that could ignite a new world war, even if nobody truly wants it. We'll talk about military accidents, cyber attacks that spin out of control, nuclear alert systems that might trigger escalation automatically, communication breakdowns between leaders, and the risks of artificial intelligence making decisions in the heat of crisis. And by the end, I'll show you the single most underrated signal that experts say could be the canary in the coal mine for a true global crisis. If you have your own take, or if you think we're missing something, drop it in the comments. Your perspective matters more than ever. Let's start with the front line. In today's world, we're seeing more and more close encounters between rival militaries than at any point since the Cold War. Russian jets shadowing NATO bombers over the Baltic Sea, American reconnaissance planes buzzing the Chinese coast, Ukrainian drones entering Russian airspace, and unmarked submarines surfacing near enemy territory. All these events make the margin for error razor thin. A military accident might sound minor on paper, but in the real world, a single shot, a mistaken missile launch, or a drone straying too close can trigger a rapid chain reaction. The classic example is the 1983 Korean Airlines Flight 007 incident, where a civilian airliner was shot down by the Soviet Union after being mistaken for a spy plane. That single event brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, as described by multiple accounts in the BBC and Cold War archives. Today, the speed of information and the proliferation of autonomous systems make escalation even more likely. In the Black Sea, NATO warships routinely encounter Russian naval forces, and every exercise, no matter how well planned, carries the risk that a miscommunication or unexpected maneuver could spark a crisis. And don't forget about Taiwan and the South China Sea, where American and Chinese military vessels and aircraft operate within miles of each other, sometimes even within visual range. As Defense One has reported, recent war games show that the line between routine patrol and real combat is blurrier than ever. With advanced drones, hypersonic missiles, and electronic warfare tools all in play, the window for human decision-making shrinks, and the chance for unintended escalation rises with every new maneuver. Now let's move into the digital battlefield. In the past, wars started with soldiers crossing borders or missiles streaking through the sky, but today, the next world war could begin with a cyber attack that no one even sees coming until the damage is already done. Why is this possible? Because in 2025, nearly every aspect of modern life is wired together. Military command networks, civilian power grids, water supplies, hospitals, transportation, air traffic control, even the systems that manage nuclear weapons. The same digital code that allows countries to run at high speed also means a single breach can ripple everywhere. A cyber attack launched by a hostile state or even a rogue group of hackers could instantly shut down the lights in a major city, paralyze communications between military commanders, or even create the false impression that a nation is under attack, leading to panic and confusion at the highest levels. Real-world examples are no longer hypothetical. In 2015, Russian hackers targeted Ukraine's power grid, cutting off electricity to over 200,000 homes in the middle of winter. The New York Times and Security Week reported on how, within hours, emergency services were overloaded, and the incident sent shockwaves through Europe's energy security planners. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Military strategists have warned that a similar attack targeting the electrical grid or communications backbone of a NATO member during a period of crisis could trigger an immediate military response, especially if leaders cannot distinguish between a cyber attack and the opening move of a larger offensive. FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security have repeatedly raised the alarm that critical infrastructure is often built on old software, connected by networks that were never designed with today's threats in mind. Simulated cyber attacks run by the U.S. Department of Defense show just how quickly malware or a weaponized virus can hop across interconnected systems, jumping from a military base to a civilian hospital, or from an energy company to air traffic control. In one exercise, a fake virus disabled command and control systems for hours, forcing decision makers to operate in the dark. What if that happened in real life during a standoff, or just as tensions between nuclear-armed rivals were peaking? Perhaps the most dangerous element of all is uncertainty. When a cyber attack takes down critical systems, it's often unclear in the chaos whether the event is a random glitch, an accident, or a deliberate act of war. Attribution takes time, but military response windows are measured in minutes. This is the scenario that keeps analysts at Defense One and the Atlantic Council up at night. A world where a sudden digital blackout is misinterpreted as a prelude to missile launches, or where automated defense systems, lacking full context, initiate countermeasures on their own. Imagine the consequences if hackers were to disrupt the early warning radars that track incoming missiles, or if cyber operations injected false data into systems that control nuclear alerts. The margin for error would vanish. Leaders might be forced to make decisions with incomplete or misleading information, potentially unleashing a crisis that no one ever intended to start. In an era when the digital and physical worlds are fused, the battlefield is everywhere, and the risks are shared by everyone, from generals and command centers to families at home. This is not just a plot for movies. As cybersecurity experts constantly remind us, the most devastating attack is the one you do not see until it is too late. If there is one scenario that truly keeps military analysts and government leaders awake at night, it is not the image of a world leader pressing a red button, but the risk that a nuclear exchange could begin almost automatically, driven by systems that are designed to react faster than any human being could ever respond. This is what experts call automatic escalation, and it is one of the most overlooked but real threats to global security in 2025. The concept is often associated with the so-called dead hand, the system created by the Soviet Union during the Cold War and reportedly maintained by Russia today, that would guarantee a retaliatory nuclear strike even if the country's top leadership was wiped out by a first strike. The idea was simple and terrifying. If sensors and communication links detected massive nuclear explosions and loss of command, the system could automatically launch missiles at predetermined targets without a single human giving the final order. According to detailed investigations by Foreign Affairs, BBC, and Defense One, the existence of such systems has forced other nuclear powers to upgrade their own protocols, creating a network of automated checks, alerts, and potential counterstrikes that now spans the globe. But here's the chilling reality. While these systems are designed to make retaliation certain and thus deter a first strike, they also introduce a new layer of risk. Over the last 40 years, both the United States and Russia have streamlined their nuclear alert protocols to ensure they can respond within minutes to any sign of incoming attack. The goal is to reduce vulnerability, but the effect is that every new detection system, whether based on satellites, radar, seismic sensors, or digital communications, is another possible point of failure. And history shows us just how close we have come to disaster because of these systems. The 1983 incident with Stanislav Petrov is a perfect example. He was a Soviet officer responsible for monitoring early warning satellites when a computer reported several American missiles headed for the USSR. Petrov, relying on his experience and instinct, chose not to report the alert as a real attack, trusting that it was a glitch rather than the start of nuclear war. He was right. The alert was triggered by sunlight reflecting off clouds, a flaw in the satellite's detection algorithm. If Petrov had simply followed protocol, the entire Soviet response system would have been activated, and the world might have witnessed a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. That was then. Today, the speed and complexity of early warning systems have increased exponentially. Artificial intelligence now analyzes streams of data from satellites, radar stations, and electronic sensors, searching for signs of hostile action. In theory, this should make the process more accurate. In reality, as the BBC and experts at the Union of Concerned Scientists have warned, it makes the window for human intervention even smaller. If a computer flags a threat and the protocol says to respond immediately, the pressure on commanders to act quickly is enormous. In a real crisis, when every second counts, that can mean the difference between cautious restraint and an irreversible launch order. What makes the situation even riskier is the sheer number of countries now operating their own nuclear alert chains. This is not just a story of Russia and the US anymore. China has spent the last decade modernizing its nuclear command and control, adding new satellites and early warning radars. India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed neighbors with a long history of tension, maintain rapid response systems that rely heavily on automated decision-making. North Korea, meanwhile, is developing its own version of an alert chain, though much less transparent to outside observers. Every new actor adds complexity, uncertainty, and ultimately, more chances for something to go wrong. And because these systems are built to ensure no attack goes unanswered, even a minor incident, a technical malfunction, a test missile misread as a real launch, or even a cyber attack that scrambles early warning data could trigger a deadly chain reaction. There have already been close calls in recent years. In 2010, a computer glitch at NORAD, the US Missile Warning Center, generated a false alarm of a Russian missile launch, briefly putting American forces on alert until the error was identified. In 2020, a South Korean warning system mistakenly identified a North Korean launch that turned out to be a test, causing confusion and heightened readiness across the region. These incidents rarely make headlines, but for those inside the system, they are a sobering reminder that the safeguards in place are not foolproof. The bottom line is simple, but sobering. As technology advances and more control is handed to automated systems, the possibility of an accidental or unintended escalation increases. What once required a deliberate, conscious decision at the highest level could now happen almost on autopilot, in a matter of minutes, with little time for cool heads or second thoughts. And as more countries enter the nuclear club, each with their own protocols and levels of transparency, the margin for error shrinks even further. That is why so many experts, from former Pentagon officials to scientists at the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, argue that the risk of automatic escalation is now one of the most urgent threats we face, not just a relic of the Cold War, but a real and growing danger in the world we live in today. Let's talk about human error and politics. Sometimes the road to disaster is paved with good intentions, or with misunderstood signals, failed hotlines, and mixed messages. In an age where national leaders tweet in real time and news spreads globally in seconds, the risk of miscommunication is higher than ever. Think about the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, where a single misinterpreted message could have pushed both sides over the edge. Even today, diplomatic red lines are sometimes drawn in ambiguous terms, and not every country interprets them the same way. For example, during the ongoing standoff over Ukraine, Western leaders have made statements about support for Kyiv that Moscow sometimes reads as threats, while the US sees them as deterrents. The BBC and Reuters have covered how a mistranslated phrase, a missed phone call, or a hardline statement made for domestic audiences can have unpredictable consequences. There have been recent examples of hotline calls between Washington and Moscow going unanswered during tense standoffs, or military attachés failing to deliver the correct message because of protocol confusion. And now, with multiple powers in the mix, NATO, Russia, China, India, North Korea, the number of potential misunderstandings multiplies exponentially. As tensions build, even a routine military drill or a provocative press release can be misread as the first move in a broader conflict. When communication breaks down, escalation becomes a coin toss. The final, and perhaps most unpredictable risk, comes from the rapid rise of artificial intelligence and automated defense systems. For decades, military strategy depended on human judgment, calculation, and restraint. But in 2025, that balance is shifting. AI now controls everything from early warning radars to anti-missile batteries, drone swarms, and even portions of strategic planning. The logic is simple. AI can react faster than any person, process more data, and remove emotional bias. But here's the dark side. Machines can also misinterpret ambiguous data, fail to understand context, or react to inputs in ways humans would never choose. Imagine a scenario where two rival AI systems both interpret a radar anomaly as an attack and both respond with real weapons before anyone in the chain of command can override the program. According to recent analysis by the RAND Corporation and interviews on Defense One, there are already recorded cases where AI-powered systems have taken actions that alarmed human operators, including launching interceptors or moving military assets in response to signals later revealed as glitches. In the next major crisis, the combination of speed, complexity, and opaque algorithms means the risk of a runaway escalation is higher than most people realize. What's worse, as more militaries rely on black box AI systems, it becomes harder for leaders to understand or control the logic driving decisions in the heat of a conflict. This is not a problem for the future, it's a risk for today. So where does this leave us? The most dangerous trigger for the next world war might not be an explicit order, a declaration of hostilities, or even a planned military campaign. It could be a chain of small mistakes, accidents, and technical errors that, together, spiral out of control. In an age where machines move faster than humans and global rivalries leave no room for delay, the line between peace and disaster has never been thinner. If you have made it this far, you already know how important it is to stay informed and think critically. Now I want to hear from you. Which risk do you see as the most likely or the most worrying? Did we miss something crucial? Let us know in the comments and join the conversation, because understanding these signals could make all the difference. And if you want more real-world analysis, not just headlines, subscribe and stay sharp. Safety Zone community, the next chapter is being written right now.